Space Adventures, let's see, where's the, oh, here's the remote, right? And just bear with me one moment. I'm just going to see if I can find enter on here. And I don't see it. Which one? Oh, the one that says the word enter on it. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about. I'm going to talk about our circumlunar mission, but first let me talk a little bit about Space Adventures. And so I'll start in about our space programs, what we have going today, and then branch into the technical origins of what we call our circumlunar mission, which we call DSE Alpha, the candidate aerospace systems that are available to perform such a mission, the various mission profiles that are available, and then I'll wrap up. So few people know that Space Adventures has a suborbital program. We are developing a suborbital program with the Federal Space Agency of Russia. Thank you. And it's being designed by the Masishev Design Bureau. The program is funded, and we're moving forward. And I don't generally get much involved with suborbital. My focus is obviously primarily Earth orbital, low Earth orbital, and lunar. And so with our lunar program, the really nice thing, I mean, Space Adventures, we are the only space tourism, private space exploration company that's making money out there. And, you know, but I should say that we do it by the shoulders of giants, by using basically government-funded vehicles, the Russian Soyuz TMA spacecraft, and of course the International Space Station, which is operated by the international partners. And obviously, if we didn't have essentially what is, in a sense, the government footing a large part of the bill, or government's footing a large part of the bill, we wouldn't have a program. And so we're very grateful for that. So let me talk a little bit more about Orbital. First client was Dennis Tito. You may remember that he originally set out to do his orbital mission with Mir Corp and to fly on the Mir space station. And when became clear that the Mir was going to be deorbited, he then, we actually had an agreement with him that if he was not able to fly on the Mir, he would then transition to us and to the ISS. And so we organized his program to the ISS. He was our first client. Our second client was the first African in space, Mark Shuttleworth. He flew in 2002. And he's actually, so far, the youngest private space explorer, space tourist through Space Adventures. Greg Olson, my hometown of Princeton, New Jersey. He flew in fall of last year. Greg is a material scientist. His objective for his mission was to grow, to do material sciences in space, use the furnaces on the International Space Station, and also use his near-infrared sensors to do near-infrared astronomy and Earth remote sensing. Unfortunately, he was able to use the furnaces on the ISS, or he was not able to export his near-infrared sensors to Russia to then take to the ISS. So he basically had to do other things, but he still had a very good time. And he still felt it was very worthwhile, and he's also very interested in flying again. Our fourth client is Daisuke Enomoto, a Japanese information technology and internet entrepreneur. And if all goes as planned, he will be flying in mid-September, hopefully September 14th of this year, to the International Space Station. Daisuke, or Daisuke's backup, is Anusha Ansari, and she plans to do her orbital flight probably in in the 2008 or later time frame. It's still not, obviously not decided by her. Actually, our fifth client under contract is Charles Simoni. You may know Charles from Microsoft. He was the chief engineer at Microsoft before he transitioned. He left Microsoft to start his own software company, and yeah, it's really neat working with Charles. The man's a PhD. He is a crackerjack pilot. He's a chopper pilot. He's a fighter aircraft pilot, and he also is checked out to fly business jets. So the really, it's actually a little scary because he knows more about the systems on the ISS and on the Soyuz than a lot of the engineers, Russian engineers over in Russia. So it's very impressive. It's really a great pleasure to work with him. He's brilliant, and he really knows his stuff as far as space technology is concerned. So now let me transition into our program which we call Alpha, Deep Space Expeditions A, the A mission, first mission. We don't like to use ones because ones tend to be bad luck in the Soviet and Russian space programs, so we're using the alphabet this time. And so technical origin, as Ben mentioned, some of the hardware heritage Soyuz. The Soyuz reentry capsule has already flown circumlunar missions, basically an earlier version of that vehicle. And so not only will we use a, see if I can find my laser here. Not only will we use a, can you all see that? Basically the descendant of the Soyuz reentry capsule and the descendant of the Soyuz service module, but we're also counting using the descendant of the Block D, which is an oxygen kerosene upper stage that was originally designed to be man-rated to fly in the L1 program and to also support lunar landings in the Soviet lunar program. So there's some nice heritage with the systems that we plan to use. One of the great, and this is something important, one of the great, the great barrier in the L1 flying manned is that they essentially planned on launching everything atop a Proton launch vehicle, and which was man-rated with an escape system. But since this was during the space race, the Proton was a brand new launch vehicle, and they just couldn't get the reliability to a point with the launch vehicle to have the confidence to fly it manned. And so Zond was canceled in the early 70s. And essentially its coup de grace was Apollo 8. And an interesting sort of historical note is that when the CIA found out that the Russians were attempting to do a manned circumlunar mission to get the bragging rights to say that they had been the first to send men to the moon, we, the US, NASA, responded with Apollo 8. So just another shot, a close-up, and essentially the escape system on the Proton is a scaled-up version of the escape system on the Soyuz. And an interesting, they originally started out with a smaller escape rocket, as much ISP as the system you see there, and they essentially realized that they had to beef it up when they had a failure during a launch with the Proton with the Zond on top of it, and the escape system activated, and they went out to recover the descent capsule, which the escape system worked successfully, and they arrived at what was where the descent capsule had parachuted down, and it was close enough near the proton wreckage that all the noxious gas or poisonous gas from the proton was essentially descending on the capsule and on the recovery crew. So they realized that they had to build a larger system, and again, this was really the big barrier in flying the L1 Zond type spacecraft manned. Another interesting heritage of the Soyuz is not only was the L1 designed to go to the moon with again a variant of the Soyuz service module and reentry capsule, but there was also a Soyuz built to orbit the moon, and this is what was called the LOC, or the Lunar Orbital Craft, and so the systems engineering work are a descendant of what needs to be done to a degree has already been done. Unfortunately, the LOC never successfully, well, it never reached the moon. So, but I guess from an engineering standpoint, some of the problems, or at least some ideas on how to solve the problems for doing a Soyuz, putting a Soyuz on a circumlunar mission, or sending a Soyuz on a circumlunar mission have already been solved. So let me talk about the candidate space systems, or essentially the spacecraft and launch vehicles that we would use. Actually, the Soyuz would have to be modified extensively, but there are no major showstoppers in the modifications. I mean, so what has to be done? Obviously, the heat shield has to be thickened. The light system, which includes the toilet system, has to be beefed up for these missions. Guidance, navigation, and control. The solar arrays, for example, have to be strengthened so that they don't collapse during the boost phase. So there's a variety of upgrades that have to be done, and then also have to be qualified. So essentially, our mission profile basically employs a dedicated Soyuz, where the Soyuz that's going to the moon is the Soyuz that is launched to the ISS. It stays there for a period of 14 to 16 days, depending on essentially leave when you want, but depending on when the lunar launch window opens up. Just again, just to give you an idea of the spacecraft. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. So essentially, we don't, with our mission profile, we don't have an additional module added. We don't see the delta V. Our plan is essentially, we have 3 candidate launch vehicles for this mission, and we don't have the delta V to add an additional module. But our approach with this mission has always been to keep it as simple as possible, and to try and use as few new systems and make as few as possible, so that we can essentially get a good grasp of our reliability. Let me see if I can go back. Well, I'll just continue from here. This is a shot of the descent capsule. As you can see, it's pretty snug fitting in there. This is a shot down from the Orbital, or the habitation module. And this is actually, I think, one of the great attributes of the Soyuz is the fact that the reentry capsule is a snug fit, and that makes it very safe. And you can withstand very high G loads, very high G shocks in that reentry, in that reentry capsule. And so it's a very, although it is small in size, at the end of the day, it's that small size that you, if there's a failure during launch, or if there are issues during reentry. This is just a shot in orbit inside the habitation module or orbital module of the Soyuz TMA spacecraft. It's overall, including the descent capsule, you're looking at about 10 square meters inside there. And we've conducted interviews of astronauts and our clients, cosmonauts, and about the spending 5.5 days inside. These are all people that have flown inside the Soyuz, and they say it's, to them, as long as they're heading for the moon, it's not an issue. Volumetrically wise, I mean, you're in 0G, you're using all that volume inside there, and they believe that they would be quite comfortable on their way. So again, we're not reinventing the wheel. We would utilize, the crew would launch to the ISS or go launch into low Earth orbit to rendezvous with an upper stage without going to the ISS using the Soyuz FG launch vehicle, proven system with an escape system, and essentially we don't have to do any modifications there. There are two candidate variations of the Proton that we could use. Personally, I like the Proton K, given it has a long flight history, and it's a very economical launch vehicle. But we can also use the Proton M variant. Actually, believe it or not, based on our calculations for delta V and how much fuel margin we end up with, the best vehicle for the mission, although it's probably the most expensive, is the Zenit sea-launched Zenit using a block DM. And so again, this is just a nice option, and at the end of the day, when all the modification work and design work is done, if we have to use a Zenit sea launch, we certainly can. We have the option to buy them, and given the fact that you can essentially place it in the latitude that you need it in, and you end up saving a wide margin of fuel when you do the rendezvous and fly the mission. So the primary candidate for the mission is a block DM, and it's based on its long flight heritage and the fact that very few modifications, essentially none, have to be made to it. There are the Breeze M is also a candidate, but there are some extensive modifications that have to be made to it in order to fly this particular mission. And again, we want to just keep it simple. We don't want to be with anything, which we want to minimize the new stuff that we have to fly with. And so, and that essentially puts us on top of a block DM for the mission. So one of the destination options is the ISS. Again, the profile allows, with the two mission profiles that we have, give you the option of either going there or not going there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So yeah, let's get into mission profiles. Just sort of an interesting, I love this slide because it's just given the history behind it. I mean, we are flying an Earth orbit rendezvous mission. Apollo, they had three choices. They looked at all three. Using the Saturn V, they felt the best option was lunar orbit rendezvous. And Zond, again, given the issues, was essentially a direct mission using one large launch vehicle, the Proton. And so again, as Ben touched on, the real cost savings in this program, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but we have an exclusive agreement with the Federal Space Agency of Russia and RC Energia for selling the commercial missions for this. And what was my point? It's a $200 million mission. It's $100 million a seat, or so essentially you can fly 2 or 3 people on the mission. And as far as flying people to the moon, I think that's a real bargain. And it's, again, I can't say enough that it's a very robust approach. So again, the mission profile for the Zond was essentially launching everything on a Proton and heading directly for the moon with the upper stage already attached to the bottom of the Zond spacecraft. We have 2 mission scenarios that we're selling, and the reason that we've essentially done the analysis for 2 missions with the Russians is that a direct staged mission gives you more launch windows, more launch options. You don't have to go to the ISS. You don't have to. You're not subject to the rules of the ISS when flying a mission. So your time is a lot less. And in some ways, this is actually a safer profile because it's one less rendezvous and docking and undocking. So it's a more simplistic mission profile. And probably the most important reason that we have gone with this mission profile, or we have this mission profile as an option, is that the ISS may not be there. And that's a factor of anyone pulling out of the program. It's just a factor of having a space station in orbit, and that there could be some sort of catastrophic incident at any time, and the crew would have to evacuate, and you might lose the space station. And so we're robust in the sense that we're not space station dependent to fly this mission profile. Okay, so then of course we have the ISS stage mission, and to just summarize, you have a dedicated lunar-rated Soyuz that is essentially, it's not part of the ISS program. It is a vehicle that would be flown in addition to the ISS program, essentially a private vehicle that would be sent up to the station. The crew would be able to spend whatever time period needed until their launch window to go to the moon opens up. And that could be anywhere from 14 to 21 days docked at the ISS. And then the crew, the upper stage is launched, the crew rendezvous and docks, and then does the circumlunar profile. And I'd like to show the video, if I may. Can you swap that out? Just minimize the presentation. There you go. And just you see it's on the lower. If you look at that bar right there, it's on the lower left. I'm sorry, right-hand side. There's a little maximization. Okay, there you go. You got it. I had it queued, but this we did. I apologize for the less than high quality graphics. We did this in SDK. This is more than just an animation. It is a mathematical model. We have all the ephemeral data for flying this mission. And the Russians also did their calculations. The profile that we fly, and this is also based on the Russians' calculation, gets us within 100 kilometers of the surface of the moon. And this is essentially just for brevity, this is just the direct staged mission profile. It does not include a flight to the ISS. We also, early on in our studies, we looked at a land-launched Zenit, but that mission profile involved modifying too many modifications to the Block DM. Basically, the fuel tank on the Block DM was enlarged so that we could fly the mission, and then there were too many modifications to the Soyuz as well to accommodate. So we then ended up with the Proton. So very important thing, and another reason why we use the Block DM. Its fuel is kerosene and LOX. And why that's important is that the burn is done and you fly directly with the moon. With the Breeze M, it's storable propellant. And so you have to, your burn is much longer, which I don't like. Your burn time with the upper stage is much longer. And another important thing here, the Soyuz actually has to perform a burn as well. And that burn, using the Soyuz's main engines, fine-tune the flyby around the moon, so we're able to get down very accurately to 100 kilometers. Also more important is that if the upper stage, if the guidance on the upper stage is off and we're basically heading on a collision course with the moon, or we're essentially way off course, the engines on the Soyuz can then be used to essentially lower the parabolic or avoid basically a collision with the moon. So that's very important, and that's also another reason to keep the mass down. I made a mistake on basically how the Soyuz when it flies in orbit or in space, it does a flat spin, not a barrel roll like the Apollo capsule. So we can go back to the presentation real quick. I'll finish up. So again, you know, one of the more important points about keeping the vehicle simple is that you have lower mass, and so you have more fuel margin to do various aborts if needed. Why don't you go ahead and put that in presentation mode? It's just a little, it's right there. If you click on that button right there and the little projector or screen button, there you go. All right, so just go to the next slide here. So now I'll conclude, and just to give you some of the imagery, just to show you the imagery of what a crew, what clients would see on a mission. You know, you would have a nice stay on the International Space Station, and you would be, be able to do whatever clients like to do, either experiments, just enjoy zero gravity, enjoy, photograph, do extensive remote sensing of the Earth, photographing the Earth, whatever a client would want to do there. And there's just spectacular phenomena in low Earth orbit that you would experience on a mission aboard the ISS. And then once rendezvous and docked with the upper stage and you're on your way, you would then be able to see the Earth limb from limb, recede. You'd be able to see the illuminated lunar far side from an altitude of 100 kilometers. And this was taken from an altitude of about 110 kilometers. So this is a very good approximation of what you would see on this mission. You would experience Earthrise and do your return. And if you want more information on the mission, that's our website. I should also say that we're actively marketing this program to qualified individuals worldwide. We've identified over 1,500 individuals worldwide that have the resources to fly this mission. And we're going to try and get in front of every one of them. And I think that we'll be successful in selling this mission. And I also would just like to add, in my personal view, that this also opens the issue for ownership, the right to be able to claim territories on the moon, for private use. I think that I would like that as someone who is selling this program, I'd like to be able to offer that as a benefit to my clients. The fact that they would be able to maybe, and provided that they use it, you know, not just to claim it and flip it on the real estate market, but to claim territories and then go and use those territories. I think that it creates competition, and competition is good. We need competition. We need the Chinese going to the moon. We need the Russians, European, everyone going to the moon. If someone is there, we'll be there. We being the U.S., NASA. And I strongly believe that competition is good. And so I'd love to take any questions from the audience. Thanks. Yes.
Yes. Ben, I want to say this to you and the rest of the folks that have done the PowerPoints and the wonderful videos. If you were to somehow make those videos available online.
Sure, they are at the website.
Okay. The reason is that we've been told that one of the things that we need to do when we get back is we need to start getting people excited. To show a PowerPoint slide with great pictures is one thing, but to show the vision of leaving the Earth, going into orbit, going to the moon, going around the moon and back, if we've got access to those, and as you said, it's here for us to download, can we do that for scout groups, school groups?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, considering the problem with intellectual property theft worldwide, and considering that all the hardware is made in Russia, how would you prevent the Russians from? Okay, see ya, we're going to do it ourselves.
That's actually a very good likelihood, and that's actually very likely that they may just go and do it themselves. And I don't have a problem with that. I neglected to mention that the $200 million cost also includes a full-up unmanned test of this new lunar-rated Soyuz. And but yeah, I mean, if they want to do the mission first, it only just helps our effort. And I'd also like to add that CSI has applied for a patent, and if they get that patent, and it's shown that we have to pay them a royalty, we'll pay them a royalty. Now, it won't be very much, Ben, but yeah, a cup of coffee. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, yeah, and it's fascinating. I want to say this. It was so frustrating, yet it's bizarre. We both independently came up with this idea, and I understand. Well, I won't say it, but it's fascinating how that sometimes happens out in the technical world, where people arrive at the same ideas at the same time, near the same time. Yes.
Dates for first mission? I mean, when do you expect to be able to?
Well, we could. It really depends on. We've got to get a client. It'll take about 3 years to build the hardware, test it, do a test flight, and then fly the mission. So, and that's deposit on a contract. So, I mean, essentially we could do this we can do this in 2009, 2010. Very quickly. And as Ben mentioned, once you demonstrate that a Soyuz can do a circumlunar mission, you can then use that vehicle to support lunar orbital missions, other missions to elsewhere, and lunar surface missions. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What is the mortality rate of the Soyuz?
Sorry?
What is the mortality rate? How many people have died?
Three people have died. The first mission, Soyuz 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, which was a test flight. It killed the pilot. The reentry vehicle was imbalanced, and the reentry vehicle went into a spin during reentry, and it was still spinning when the chute was deployed, and it tangled the primary chute. So the primary was cut away, and then the backup chute was deployed, and it tangled the backup chute, and the reentry capsule impacted the ground. So that imbalance in the vehicle was identified, and again, this was happening during the space race. This occurred in 1968, so it was a long time ago. The next fatality was in 1971, and it was with a crew of 3, and at that time they weren't flying with pressure suits. You notice the crew's wearing these space suits, and what happened was a valve that's supposed to open at about 10,000 feet opened up to equalize the air pressure in the capsule, opened up at about 200,000 feet, and it suffocated the crew. And so the remedy to that problem was to redesign the valve and then make the crew always fly with their pressure suits on during launch and reentry, and during emergencies in the Soyuz. There have been other issues with the Soyuz, and that the TMAs, TMA-1, which was a new upgrade of this new variant of the Soyuz, the guidance system shut down during reentry, and the reentry vehicle, instead of doing a guided entry where it surfs on the plasma using its thrusters, it went into a ballistic reentry, and rather than the crew experiencing 4.5 Gs, they experienced 8 Gs on reentry. It was uncomfortable. It was probably scary, but they were fine. And I'll also say that when all our clients fly now in training, are screened in the centrifuge up to 8.5 Gs. So in the unlikely event that there's a guidance system problem, and they would have to do a ballistic reentry. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry, the lights is in my eyes.
2 questions. One is, where are you going to launch from?
We would launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. That's certainly where they launch from. If you do a sea launch, then we'd launch from the Pacific Ocean, and so those areas. A proton launch vehicle would also launch from Baikonur.
Second question is, do you have an insurance protocol, or requiring people to sign releases?
We have a process in place to resolve that, and actually we would use the that we use for our orbital program. I don't want to get into specifics, but it's something that it's one of the things that is proprietary to us that we've resolved and have been able to work forward with. Whether or not we're able, we use waivers and provide insurance. Any other questions? Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much for your time. And again, and as Ben said, I mean, let's fly. Let's do missions. All of us here are about flight, and we just need to make certain everyone else is about that too. And besides the fact that it's a Russian vehicle, this could be a wonderful component for an international. Getting things started and getting back or forward to the moon. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Mr. Faranetta. Well, we have reached the end of the conference proceedings for today, and we had a great lineup of speakers, and I'd like to thank them all again for doing such a wonderful job. And I'd also like to thank you all for bearing with me on this hectic first day, and I really appreciate your patience. I have only one announcement before you leave. Anybody who is registered as a student must meet at the registration table tomorrow morning at 7:45. And with that said, you have the evening free, and so go have fun, but not. We start again at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. But thank you.